There is a feeling that most people experience dozens of times a day, but never name. It happens when you walk into a room and no one looks up, when you speak and the conversation continues as if you said nothing, when you share something you consider important and are met with indifference or distraction. In that moment, something inside you contracts. A cold emptiness opens up in your chest. You feel yourself disappearing, becoming invisible, ceasing to exist in any way that matters. This is not sensitivity. This is not insecurity. This is one of the oldest and most primal alarm systems built into the human nervous system. The feeling you are experiencing has a name, though most people have never heard it. Psychologists call it social death, and your brain processes it the same way it processes the threat of physical death, because for most of human history, they were the same thing. To be ignored by your group, to be rendered invisible, to have your existence go unacknowledged was not a psychological inconvenience. It was a death sentence. And the humans who did not develop an overwhelming, desperate, all-consuming need for attention did not survive long enough to become your ancestors. Most people believe that the hunger for attention is a modern phenomenon, a symptom of narcissism amplified by social media and celebrity culture. But the archaeological and anthropological evidence tells a radically different story. The need for attention is not a recent corruption. It is among the oldest survival mechanisms in human evolution, and it began not with vanity or ego, but with something far more fundamental. It began with the terrifying realization that in a social species, existence itself is conditional. You do not simply exist because your body is alive. You exist because others recognize your existence. And the moment they stop paying attention to you, you begin to die socially, which throughout most of human history meant you would soon die physically. This is the hidden architecture of human consciousness. We are not individuals who happen to be social. We are social beings who experience ourselves as individuals only when reflected in the attention of others. 300,000 years ago, when anatomically modern humans first emerged, survival was impossible alone. A solitary human on the African savanna was easy prey. No claws, no fangs, no protective armor, no exceptional speed. What humans had was each other. Cooperation was not optional. It was the only thing that kept the species alive. But cooperation creates a catastrophic vulnerability. It requires trust, coordination, and the pooling of resources. And this means that every individual's survival depends entirely on maintaining their position within the group. The evolutionary psychologist John Tooby calls this the coalition problem. In any cooperative group, there is a constant calculus being performed by every member. Who contributes? Who takes? Who can be trusted? Who is valuable enough to protect? And this calculus is tracked through a single irreplaceable currency: attention. Attention is not just awareness. It is the mechanism through which social value is assigned and tracked. When the group pays attention to you, they are investing cognitive resources in tracking your existence, your actions, your value. When they stop paying attention, you have ceased to register as socially significant. You have become irrelevant. And in a world where your survival depends on the group's willingness to share food, provide protection, and care for you when injured, irrelevance is lethal. The primatologist Frans de Waal documented this dynamic in chimpanzee societies. When a chimpanzee loses social status, they do not simply feel bad. They exhibit physiological stress responses identical to those seen in life-threatening situations: elevated cortisol, suppressed immune function, increased disease vulnerability. The body recognizes social invisibility as a survival threat, and humans inherited this system, then amplified it beyond anything seen in other primates. The neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman discovered something astonishing about the human brain. When you are doing nothing, when your mind is at rest, a specific network activates. It is called the default mode network, and it does not rest. It obsessively simulates social scenarios. It rehearses conversations. It predicts how others will respond to you. It replays social interactions, analyzing what worked and what failed. It constructs and reconstructs your social identity. Lieberman's research revealed that this network consumes more energy than the parts of your brain used for focused problem solving. Your brain spends more resources managing your social existence than it does on almost any other function. This is not because humans are vain or superficial. It is because for the vast majority of human evolutionary history, managing your social existence was the difference between life and death. But attention is finite. This is the iron law that shaped human psychology. In any group, there is only so much attention to go around. If 50 people are in a room, each person can receive, on average, 2% of the collective attention. But attention is not distributed equally. It flows toward those perceived as valuable, interesting, dangerous, or novel, and this created the most intense selection pressure humans ever faced: the competition for attention. The individuals who could capture and hold the attention of the group had access to resources, mating opportunities, protection, and social support. Those who failed to capture attention were functionally invisible, and invisibility was death. This is why humans evolved to become the most attention-seeking species on the planet, not because we are narcissistic, but because attention is the substrate of survival in a hyper-social species. The anthropologist Jerome Barko identified this as the origin of prestige psychology. He argued that humans have an evolved drive to be admired, respected, and attended to by others. But here is where the mechanism becomes psychologically devastating. The drive for attention is not satisfied by achieving it. It is only temporarily quieted, because attention is not a resource you acquire and keep. It is a process that must be continuously renewed. The moment people stop paying attention to you, the alarm activates again. You feel yourself disappearing, and the fear returns. This is why attention-seeking behavior is never truly satisfied. No amount of attention is ever enough, because the system is not designed to reach satisfaction. It is designed to keep you constantly competing for something that is always slipping away. The psychologist Roy Baumeister conducted experiments that revealed the neurological basis of this desperation. When people are socially excluded, even in trivial laboratory settings, their brains show activity in the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, the same region that processes physical pain. Social exclusion does not feel like pain. It is pain. The brain makes no distinction. And chronic social invisibility produces the same effects as chronic physical pain: depression, anxiety, cognitive impairment, even increased mortality. The epidemiologist John Cacioppo spent decades studying loneliness and discovered that chronic lack of social attention is more dangerous to your health than smoking, obesity, or lack of exercise. It is not merely correlated with early death, it is a direct cause, because your body interprets sustained invisibility as evidence that you are dying socially, and it responds by beginning to shut down physically. But the system was calibrated for a world that no longer exists. For 200,000 years, humans lived in bands of 20 to 150 people. The amount of attention you needed was finite and achievable. You could know everyone in your group. You could track your standing. You could invest in relationships that would return attention over time. The feedback loops were clear. If you contributed to the hunt, people noticed. If you told a compelling story, people listened. If you supported someone in conflict, they remembered. Attention was earned through genuine contribution and maintained through consistent behavior. And crucially, there was a ceiling. You could become the most respected member of your group, and then the competition eased. You had achieved stable, recognized status. The hunger could rest. Everything changed when humans began living in larger societies. The agricultural revolution 10,000 years ago created settlements of thousands, then tens of thousands. Suddenly you were surrounded by strangers, people who would never know your name, never track your contributions, never remember your existence. The attention economy collapsed. You could not possibly earn recognition from everyone. And this created a new phenomenon: anonymous invisibility. You could be surrounded by people and still be utterly unseen. The existential philosopher Søren Kierkegaard identified this as the sickness unto death, the despair of not being recognized as an individual, of being lost in the crowd. He argued that this anonymity was a form of spiritual annihilation, worse than physical death, because it meant your existence had no significance, no impact, no meaning. The sociologist Georg Simmel wrote about this transformation in the early 20th century, watching people flood into cities. He observed that urban life created what he called the blasé attitude, a psychological defense mechanism against the overwhelming number of people you encounter. You cannot possibly pay attention to everyone, so you pay attention to almost no one. You become numb, but this creates a vicious cycle. The more people adopt the blasé attitude to protect themselves, the more invisible everyone becomes, and the more invisible you feel, the more desperately you seek attention. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche saw this desperation everywhere in modern life. He described it as the last man, the person who has no higher purpose than being seen, being recognized, being validated by the crowd. The person whose entire existence is oriented toward capturing the gaze of others, because without that gaze they have no sense of self. And then came the technology that would turn this hunger into an addiction more powerful than any drug. The internet did not create the need for attention. It weaponized it. Social media platforms are not designed to connect people. They are designed to extract attention and convert it into profit. And they do this by exploiting the exact evolutionary mechanisms that made humans desperate for social recognition. Every platform is built on the same principle: make attention quantifiable, make it visible, make it competitive, and make it infinite. Likes, followers, views, shares, all metrics that translate the invisible process of social attention into clear, comparable numbers. And numbers can be ranked. The moment attention becomes a number, it becomes a competition. And because there is no upper limit to these numbers, the competition never ends. The technology researcher Tristan Harris, a former Google design ethicist, has explained how these systems are engineered to be addictive. Variable reward schedules, the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive, are built into every notification system. You do not know when the next like will arrive, so you check constantly. Infinite scroll ensures there is always more content, more comparison, more evidence that others are getting more attention than you. Algorithmic curation prioritizes content that generates strong emotional reactions, which means the attention economy rewards extremity, outrage, and performance over authenticity. You are not connecting with people. You are competing for a scarce resource in a rigged game designed to make you feel like you are always losing. The neuroscientist Anna Lemke has documented how this creates genuine addiction. The dopamine system in your brain is designed to motivate behavior by predicting rewards. When you anticipate attention, dopamine spikes. When you receive it, dopamine drops back to baseline. But if the attention does not come, dopamine crashes below baseline. You feel worse than you did before you started seeking attention. This is the neurological signature of addiction. And just like drug addiction, you develop tolerance. The amount of attention that once satisfied you no longer does. You need more followers, more likes, more validation just to feel normal. And when you do not get it, you experience withdrawal. Anxiety, irritability, emptiness, the same symptoms seen in people withdrawing from cocaine or alcohol. But here is what makes this addiction uniquely destructive. Drug addiction hijacks a reward system designed for food or sex, basic survival needs. Attention addiction hijacks a reward system designed for social survival, which is processed by your brain as equally fundamental. You cannot simply decide to stop caring about attention the way you might decide to quit smoking. The need for attention is woven into the deepest layers of your identity. Your sense of self is literally constructed from the attention others pay to you. The psychologist Charles Cooley called this the looking glass self, the idea that you see yourself only through the reflection in others' eyes. You do not have a fixed identity that exists independent of social recognition. Your identity is the accumulated pattern of how others have responded to you throughout your life. And this means that when attention disappears, your sense of self begins to disintegrate. The philosopher Martin Heidegger warned about this almost a century ago. He argued that modern existence had become characterized by what he called das Gerede, idle talk, the constant chatter of public opinion that drowns out authentic existence. People no longer live their own lives. They live the life that appears most visible, most attention-worthy, most acceptable to the faceless crowd. You make choices not based on what you actually want or value, but based on what will generate attention. And the tragedy is that this strategy fails, because the attention you receive is not for your authentic self, it is for the performance. So even when you succeed in capturing attention, you remain unseen. The real you, the one beneath the performance, is still invisible. You are more alone than ever, but now you are alone in front of an audience. This explains a phenomenon that baffles many observers. Why do people with millions of followers still feel empty? Why do celebrities with unlimited attention still struggle with depression and addiction? Because the attention they receive is not recognition of their actual existence. It is a response to an image, a brand, a carefully constructed persona. The more attention they get, the more invisible their real self becomes. They are trapped in a prison made of spotlights. Everyone is looking at them, but no one sees them. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre wrote about this in his analysis of the gaze. He argued that being looked at by others can be objectifying, that it turns you into a thing to be observed rather than a consciousness to be met. When attention becomes a commodity, when it is quantified and competed for, it ceases to be genuine recognition. It becomes surveillance. You are not being seen, you are being evaluated. The psychologist Sherry Turkle has documented how this transforms relationships. People no longer connect to be together, they connect to have something to post about. Experiences are valuable not for what they are, but for the attention they can generate. A meal is not about taste or nourishment. It is about the photograph. A vacation is not about rest or exploration. It is about content. Conversations are not about understanding another person. They are about generating quotable moments. Every interaction becomes a transaction in the attention economy. And the question is never, is this meaningful? The question is always, will this get attention? This is what the philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls the transparency society, where everything must be made visible, everything must be shared, everything must be optimized for maximum attention capture. Nothing is allowed to simply exist in private, unobserved, for its own sake. But the cruelest aspect of this system is how it makes you complicit in your own suffering. No one forces you to post. No one forces you to check your metrics. You do it voluntarily because the ancient wiring in your brain screams that attention equals survival. And in a digital environment designed to exploit that wiring, you become an addict administering your own drug. The behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner demonstrated that the most addictive reward schedule is random intermittent reinforcement. Sometimes you get rewarded, sometimes you do not, and you can never predict which. This is exactly how social media attention works. Sometimes your post gets traction, sometimes it disappears, and the unpredictability makes the compulsion stronger. You keep posting, keep checking, keep performing, because the next one might be the one that finally gives you the hit you need. But it never does, because the system is not designed to satisfy you, it is designed to keep you hungry. The psychiatrist Gabor Mate argues that all addiction is ultimately about pain. You become addicted to something because it temporarily numbs a deeper suffering you cannot face. And the deeper suffering beneath attention addiction is a truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The truth that you do not know who you are without the attention of others. That your sense of self is so fragile, so dependent on external validation, that the prospect of sustained invisibility feels like annihilation. You are terrified that if people stopped paying attention to you, you would discover that there is nothing there, that you are empty, that your existence has no inherent meaning or value. So you keep seeking attention, not because you are vain, but because you are terrified. You are running from a void that seems bottomless. But here is what no one tells you. The void you are running from is not bottomless. It is actually quite shallow. And on the other side of it is freedom. The only way to break the addiction to attention is to deliberately, consciously, courageously go through the experience of being completely ignored and discovering that you do not die. This is not a metaphor. This is a practice. And it is the most difficult thing you will ever do, because every instinct in your body will scream that this is dangerous, that you are making yourself vulnerable, that you are risking social death. But that instinct is outdated. You are not living in a band of 50 hunter-gatherers where invisibility means starvation. You are living in a world where you can survive physically without anyone's attention. The attention is not keeping you alive, it is keeping you trapped. The practice is called attention fasting, and it was developed by therapists working with social media addiction. The protocol is simple. You remove yourself from all attention-seeking behavior for a defined period. No posting, no performing, no attempts to be seen or recognized. You go completely quiet, and then you observe what happens. At first, panic. The alarm system activates. You feel yourself disappearing. The urge to post something, anything, to prove you still exist, becomes overwhelming. But you do not act on it. You sit with it. You breathe through it. You watch the fear rise and peak and, crucially, subside. Because it does subside. The panic is not permanent. It is a wave. And, like all waves, it crashes and recedes. After the panic comes withdrawal, emptiness, restlessness, a gnawing sense that something is wrong. This is your dopamine system recalibrating. You have been flooding it with hits of social validation, and now you have cut off the supply. Your brain is searching for the drug. It creates anxiety to motivate you to seek attention again. But if you stay with the discomfort, something remarkable happens. You begin to notice things. You notice how much of your thinking was organized around capturing attention, how many of your thoughts were actually rehearsals for performances you were planning to give, how much of your life was being lived not for you, but for an imagined audience. And in the silence created by their absence, you begin to hear something you may not have heard in years, your own voice, not the voice that performs, the voice underneath. The meditation teacher Pema Chodron calls this touch and go, the practice of touching the raw experience of being with yourself and then letting go of the story about what it means. You touch the emptiness, the fear, the sense of having no identity, and instead of running, instead of filling it with more attention-seeking, you let it be. You discover that the emptiness is not actually empty. It is full of sensations, thoughts, emotions that have nothing to do with being seen by others. You discover that you have an interior life that exists whether anyone is watching or not. And this interior life is not a void to be filled. It is the actual substance of your existence. Everything else, all the performing and seeking and measuring, is a distortion layered on top of it. But here is the part that transforms everything. You cannot do this practice alone. This is the paradox that most people miss. The way to break your addiction to attention from strangers is not to become independent. It is to receive a different kind of attention. Attention that is not a transaction. Attention that is not conditional on your performance. Attention that is not measured or compared or quantified. The psychologist Carl Rogers called this presence the quality of being completely attentive to another person without agenda, without judgment, without trying to change them. When someone gives you this kind of attention, something shifts. You are being seen but not evaluated. You are being witnessed but not measured. And in that space, you discover that you can exist without performing, that your existence does not depend on being interesting or impressive or valuable. You simply are. And that is enough. This is what the philosopher Martin Buber meant by the I-thou relationship, a way of meeting another person that does not turn them into an object to be used or an audience to be impressed. In an I-thou relationship, both people exist fully, each recognizing the other not as a means to an end, but as a living presence. And when you have experienced even one relationship like this, the hunger for attention from strangers loses its power, because you have tasted something real, and the counterfeit, no matter how abundant, can never satisfy you again. You realize that one person who truly sees you is worth more than 1,000,000 people who merely look at you. And once you realize this, the entire attention economy collapses. The metrics become meaningless. The performance becomes exhausting. You stop seeking attention because you have found recognition, and recognition is what you were actually searching for all along. This is the secret that breaks the addiction. Attention is what you get from strangers. Recognition is what you get from people who know you. Attention is transactional. Recognition is relational. Attention is quantifiable. Recognition is qualitative. Attention makes you perform. Recognition lets you rest. The addiction to attention is not a hunger for visibility. It is a hunger for existence. You want proof that you are real, that your life matters, that your presence makes a difference. And you have been seeking that proof in numbers, in metrics, in the fleeting gaze of people who do not know your name. But the proof you are searching for cannot be found there. It can only be found in the eyes of someone who sees not what you do, but who you are. The final practice is this. Find one person who will give you their full, non-judgmental, non-transactional attention for 10 minutes. No advice, no fixing, no performing. Just presence. And in those 10 minutes, speak the truth you have been afraid to say. The truth about your fear, your emptiness, your desperate hunger to be seen. Do not perform it. Do not make it interesting. Just say it, plainly, as it actually is. And let them witness it. They will not be impressed. They will not applaud. They will simply be there. And in being there, they will give you what no amount of attention from strangers ever could. The recognition that you exist. Not the performed version. The real version. The one you have been hiding behind the mask. And when you feel yourself being recognized in this way, the addiction will break. Not through willpower, but through obsolescence. You will stop seeking attention from strangers because you will have found something infinitely more valuable. You will have found yourself reflected in the eyes of someone who actually knows you, and in that reflection you will discover what you always were but could never see. Enough, not special, not exceptional, just enough. And in that recognition, the ancient alarm will finally quiet. You will stop disappearing, not because people are paying attention, but because you have remembered that you were never actually invisible. You were only unseen. And now, at last, you are witnessed.